Hi. Civil war is what happens when it's no longer possible to be civil, i.e. to discuss things or reasonably and to behave reasonably. We are way beyond that. Is it possible that England and or Great Britain will have a new civil war? The conditions are certainly there. The civil wars, and there were three, took place between 1642 and 1651 between supporters of the king and the parliamentarians, and there are many parallels with today. One similarity is where those in power not only exceed their authority, but are self-righteously misguided. In the 1600s, the king exceeded his authority, believing rigidly that he was divinely led, a belief that he was always right, by definition. This sounds very much like the self-righteous political class we have throughout academia, the media, mainstream media, and Keir Starmer and his band of thieves and ignoramuses. For Starmer, God is the law, but it's a two-tier law, as we know, that favours what he wants. So it's an unjust God, an unfair God, just as people thought that King Charles used his power unfairly. Ironically, of course, we now have another King Charles, or perhaps this is the universe playing a joke on us, because we now have a king who is no longer head of the church, but is a rambling proponent of multicultural goo and Islam. A king who is favouring a religion, Islam, over Christianity. But we also have a political class that behaves as if they have a royal decree to subjugate their own people, to boss them, tell them what to think, to say, and to do. In the original English civil wars, it was a time of great change when society was being transformed from an old feudal system to a more modern world. And there were multiple causes for the civil wars then. Disagreements about how the economy should work, about religious practices, about the need for a new political system. Law and order was breaking down as discontent grew. Does it sound familiar? At the time, also, things really kicked off in Ireland, which has happened recently too. A similarity between then and now is religious discord. During the English Civil Wars, one of the main issues was how religion and which religion should shape national life. Catholic, Protestant, Puritan. And many feared that the king and his Catholic wife would be too sympathetic to Catholicism. Now we have a king and an establishment that appears to be overtly sympathetic to Islam. And one of the overriding tensions in England is, are we still fundamentally a Christian country? If you walk through areas of our major cities and other places, past the mosques and the halal butchers and the crowds of non-native speakers, you would have to say, no, it's not. Even non-practicing Christians would prefer a C of E to Muslim temples and Sharia law. Radical Islamists are perfectly open about their intentions. They want mosques to replace churches. They want Sharia law, which is essentially a country run according to Islamic precepts. And Islam is not a peaceful religion. It is antiquated, barbaric, ruthless, uncivilized, and contrary to just about everything that Western civilization stands or stood for. Islam does not want to integrate, it wants to dominate. Other conditions for civil war are these: factional splits, where bitter partisan divides in society are irreconcilable. This is when groups can no longer talk to each other, cannot coexist, and are only interested in their own agendas. We see that on a daily basis in the protest marches in this country and in the factionalism that is cutting through the spine of England. We arrived at this juncture years ago, and now the joints are really coming apart in the body politic. Tribal politics creates tribal behaviours. We, the majority, are told we are wrong about just about everything. Wokeism is tribalism of the most extreme and destructive kind. Islam is tribal. Not only are we right, they say, but we are the only right there is. There's no turning the other cheek in jihad, no good Samaritan in ISIS. The radical Islamists don't even try to hide the fact that they want England as an Islamic kingdom. Some would say it already is. So political groups that cannot find common ground, religious groups that are at loggerheads, social and cultural groups that keep to their own turf and view others with hostility, and we have an increasing number of illegal migrants. who will create their own unique and doubtlessly destructive culture. Common culture, integrated culture, is the glue that holds society together, however loosely. Fragmentation means cultural and societal collapse, and that may well mean violence. It may mean civil war. You could argue that we already have civil war, it just hasn't come into the open yet. It's like the volcanic lava that's bubbling underground and waiting to unleash. Underpinning all this, identity politics has created the ideal conditions for civil war by factionalising everything around race, colour, gender, creed. So-called inclusive thinking is in reality divisive and inflammatory. We have had us and them thinking thrust upon us, and this gap between the haves and have-nots, the rulers and ruled, is a fermenting ground for protests, violence and civil war. The fracturing of the realm is when cracks also in trust become chasms. Another cause of civil war is when the majority is no longer listened to. The riots at Southport were, as everyone with half a brain knows, the symptom of a much deeper malaise, a people tired of being lied to and misled, a people no longer listened to, a people knowing that their elected representatives now worshipped at the altar of multiculturalism, particularly Islam and identity politics, and which is indifferent to the needs, wishes and culture of their own indigenous majority. And to then be called far right or extremist is to add insult to injury. When you downgrade the majority, you create ripples of discontent which can grow into a tsunami. White working class people have been ignored, punished, ridiculed, and outlawed in their own country, and they are sick and tired of it. They will either decline into apathy and disappear, or rise up and say, enough is enough. The political class is creating the conditions for its own demise, and I say, good riddance to it. Another condition for civil war is when the institutions fail to serve their people, and so the people no longer have faith in them. The law, education, health, housing, government, employment. When illegal migrants are given food, shelter, pocket money, education, opportunities, healthcare, while veterans beg on the streets or pensioners can't afford fuel or food, where medical conditions are on a waiting list so long you may as well crawl away and die, unless you live in a migrant hotel, then those institutions are rotten and need taking apart. No one knows anymore whether the police are the enemy, they're all rainbow maypole dancers, or just plain useless. Are university lecturers educated, informed people, or ideological barrow boys and girls peddling identity politics to an ill-educated and indoctrinated youth? Free speech is also the air through which culture and society thrives and grows. When it's closed down, it will either destroy people's ability to think and talk and live lives as they wish, or it will break out in civil unrest. For 30 years or more, people have increasingly lost trust in our so-called leaders. The rot started with war criminal Tony Blair in the late 90s, and then when he joined in an illegal war and lied to Parliament, and then he and the odious Alistair Campbell opened the doors of the kingdom to anyone who wanted to come in, legally or otherwise, and then trust in political leaders declined to where it is now. Another cause of civil war is loss of national identity. When people feel they're being stripped of their history, their cultural norms, their sense of belonging, then they're more likely to lash out. If civil war comes to the UK, to Europe, then no one can say we weren't warned. The signs have been there for decades. Global elites like civil unrest because it creates chaos, and chaos suits their agenda and their wallets, just as war is money, but perhaps they've bitten off more than they can chew. So waves of protests across Europe, Ireland, Germany, Spain, France, Italy. And the powers that be are busy dismantling Europe, and with it the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Enlightenment, free speech, the church and democracy. Nobody wants violence. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants a nation fighting itself. But the signs are there are no alternatives. This should be a wake-up call to the political class. Dump this multicultural nonsense, equity, diversity, identity politics in the garbage where it belongs, and get back to serving the needs of your own people. If you like this, do please share and subscribe. Thank you.